All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies class, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based off of the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in JavaScript and we're talking objects, and we're in the inheritance section, and I've gone over prototypical inheritance a little bit. And now we're going to talk about the Ecmascript 2015 classes. And as it says, Ecmascript 2015 introduces class syntax, which is much more similar to the way it's done in most other programming languages. So in this section, what they do is they convert the person and the teacher examples from prototypical inheritance to classes. See the note here? This modern way is supported in all modern browsers, but it's still worth knowing about the underlying prototypical in case you work on a project that doesn't support it, or you're working on a legacy project that is still using it and they don't want to change. So let's look at a rewritten version of the person class. Well, look what we have here. So here's our person. All right, there's the constructor. So this is handling all of our properties, and then still inside of this, so we're still inside of it, then afterwards we add the methods, the greeting and the farewell. So it says, let's look at this rewritten version. The class indicates, in fact, let's just do this. Let's come down to here, move back to here, and maybe I'll regret this, but I'm going to do it like this anyway. All right, so I should be back just to my script tags. I am, and I'm going to add that. So we've got class person. Let me tab everything over one more time, except for that. All right, so here's the constructor. Again, this is handling the first name, the last name, which are put basically in their own object. All right, the age, the gender, and the interest. So really it is expecting that when we create a new person object, we will be passing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters. All right, and it looks like virtually all of those parameters are going to be strings or string arrays other than the age. All right, and then here's our greeting, which is going to reference this .name.first from up here. And the same thing with our farewell. And again, notice we're using template literals in both cases. So it's very similar to what we looked at earlier. But again, instead of using prototypical inheritance, we're using Ecmascript 2015 inheritance. So as mentioned, it indicates we're creating a new class. Inside of the block, we define all the features of the class. The constructor defines the constructor function. Greeting and farewell are the methods. It says we can now instantiate these using the new operator. And let's see. Again, hopefully this, for lack of better words, at least makes some sense to you. And if we look at the examples here, this is saying that when we call han.greeting here, it should come back and say, hi, I'm Han. And when we call the Leah.farewell, it should say Leah has left the building. Bye for now. There's hi, I'm Han. And there's Leah has left the building for now. All right. and we had just set them up as console log statements, not as alerts or anything, which is totally fine, right? All right. Under the hood, it says your classes are being converted into prototypal, I think that is, inheritance models. This is just syntactic sugar. In other words, this is happening behind the scenes. It's not so much something we have to worry about. All right. Above, we created a class to represent a person. Persons have a series of attributes common to all people. In this section, we will create a specialized teacher class. Now, this is very similar, in fact, to the Java. And remember, Java is not JavaScript, but this is similar, not exactly, but you use the keyword extends in Java as well as in JavaScript. All right, and what are we telling it here? This constructor is extending person. It will have to handle the subject and the grade. All right, the other stuff, the first name, the last name, the age, the gender, and the interest will be handled by the person class. So they say that if you put this in, it says, unlike old school constructor function where the new operator is in there, it says this isn't automatically initialized. It says it will give you the following error. So let's see if it does. It says running the code above will give you this error. Well, I didn't see it. Must call the super constructor. So there's the key part right there. That is going back, and you'll notice that it's basically the first line of executable code in the constructor. And that is going to handle the first name, the last name, the age, the gender, and the interests. It says there's no point in having a subclass if it doesn't inherit properties from the parent class. So we need to come in and add that right there. Since the super operator is actually the parent class constructor, passing it the necessary arguments will also initialize those in our subclass, thereby inheriting it. So we shouldn't just say super, we should say this. There we go. Now when we instantiate teacher objects, we can call the methods defined both for a teacher, which is the subject, and for person, which is greeting, farewell, and age. So let's check it out. So Snipe is the teacher. I don't know if that is a thing from, looks like from Harry Potter. First is not defined at new teacher. does not like something in here. Start line 49, 49 and 55. Well, there's 55. That's 49. It's kind of weird because what I did was I just copied those in. Let's double check and make sure I didn't make a mistake because I didn't do a direct copy. So okay. There's I'm Severus, and Severus has left the building. So evidently when I copied the stuff over, I didn't copy over it. Something I needed to copy probably. All right, let's finish this up. We're at 12 minutes, so we're fine. Getters and setters. All right, getters are also referred to as accessors. Setters are also referred to as mutators. They typically work in pairs. So I'll give you the example I've given to classes before in the past, and that is, imagine it's the first day of class. All right, in fact, this actually happened in the fall 2020 semester. Walked in, the class is not a big class, about 7 people, but 2 people in the class are named Gabriel. Well, what if I decided that I was going to name one of them Gabriel and the other one would be called Gabe? Well, if I went and asked both of them when they walked in one at a time, and I said, hey, good morning, I'm Jeff Scott, I'm the instructor for the class, what's your name? And the first one said, I'm Gabriel. And then the second one came in and said, I said the same thing. Hi, I'm Jeff Scott. What's your name? And they said, hi, I'm Gabriel. And I said, we've already got a Gabriel in here. Can I just call you Gabe? Well, asking their name would be a getter. Telling the one student from now on you're going to be referred to as Gabe is a setter. All right. So it says, let's enhance the teacher class with getters and setters. The class starts the same as it did the last time we looked at it. Getters and setters work in pairs. Again, the getter returns the current value. The setter changes the current value. So there's the getter. There's the setter. So what's the difference? With a setter, the name is appearing on the left-hand side of an equal sign. With a getter, you're returning that value. So let's grab this. And let's replace what we currently have in here for our teacher class with this. Let's save, bring it back to here, and refresh. And we're getting the same stuff we got before. So in other words, it's another way of performing the same operation. All right. So as mentioned here in the class above, we now have a getter and a setter for the subject property. We use underscore to separate, to create a separate value in which to store the name property. Without using this, we would get errors every time we called get or set. So at this point, as it says, to show the current value of the subject property of the Snape object, we can use Snape.subject. To assign it, we put it on the left-hand side of an equal sign. So the example below, it says, shows this, and let's try it. So we should have the same stuff we had before, and afterwards dark arts, and then balloon animals. So we should have all this stuff, then dark arts, then balloon animals. And that's exactly what we get. All right. Getters and setters can be very useful at times. For example, when you want to run the same code every time a property is requested or set. For simple cases, plain property access without a getter or setter will work just as well. So finally, almost finished here. When would you actually want to use inheritance? It says prototypes and inheritance represent some of the most complex aspects of JavaScript, but a lot of its power and flexibility comes from the ability to do this. In a way, you use inheritance all the time. When you use various features of a web API or methods properties of a built-in browser object, you're really implicitly using inheritance. In terms of using inheritance in your own code, it says you probably won't use it that often. Because of the way JavaScript works with the prototype chain, the sharing of functionality between objects is also referred to as delegation. Okay. All right. When using inheritance, you're advised not to have too many levels of inheritance and to keep careful track of where you define your methods and properties. It can almost result in spaghetti-like code because it's very hard to figure out what went with what type of an idea. Ultimately, objects, as it says, are just another form of code like functions and loops with their own specific roles and their own specific advantages and disadvantages. If you find yourself creating a bunch of related variables and functions and you want to be able to keep track of them together, all right, then an object is a good idea. It's also useful, as it says, when you want to pass collections of data from one place to another. All right. Alternatives. It says in JavaScript there are several ways to extend the prototype in addition to what has been shown above. If you want some more of those ways, you can take a look at that article. Again, as always, I'd strongly recommend that you try to test your skills here. And to summarize, as mentioned here, this article covered the remainder of the core object-oriented JavaScript theory. And in the next article, we go into Json, which is JavaScript object notation. As mentioned, it's a common data exchange format written using JavaScript objects. And now that we know what objects are, it should hopefully make a little bit more sense. The C also, these things in here are really good. I've looked through some of them, all right, and I realize if you're following this whole thing and you're going through all of it, you go, I don't have time to do that. I get it. All right, so next is working with JSON. We'll be back with that shortly.